In this episode, we're talking about the joy of Jesus with a mom focus. Mother's Day brings to mind different things for different people. Learn how Mother's Day got started and hear life shares from special guests Jenny Baker and Bethany and Carol. Our special guest today is Jenny Baker. Jenny is a single mom of a 19-year-old son and has been involved in many business ventures throughout her career. She is a Christ-centered business professional, entrepreneur, and life and business coach. Welcome, Jenny. So great to have you here today.
Hi, ladies. I'm so excited to be here. So honored to be here today to celebrate mothers and Mother's Day.
Yes, and what is super cool, our audience needs to know this. Jenny was instrumental in this podcast because her networking group is how Bethany and I met, which is like, kudos to you, Jenny. We are so excited that this is happening.
Yes, and you're our first guest. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's so exciting.
I'm so proud of you. This is just something that I know has been on both of your hearts. So I'm so glad that you connected, and you both are so joy-filled. So it's just a blessing to see that it come to fruition. So I'm very excited to be here today as well and share this experience with you.
Jenny, we're just honored to have you with us today.
Yes, we are. Well, I want to kick it off with just kind of letting you talk, Jenny, about the joy of Jesus in your life as a single mom.
Well, I just love the fact that you guys are so focused on joy, and joy comes from the Lord and the Lord alone. But what I love about the stages of growth that we walk through with our children from birth all the way to now, I'm an empty nester. I have a college student, and there's joy in each specific stage that you walk through. There's the terrible twos, they say, you know what I mean? And then there's the independent threes. But there's joy in each one of those stages as we watch how the Lord shapes and molds our children. But not just our children, like we get to be shaped and molded in those experiences as well because of our reliance on the Lord.
I love that because I too am a mom, and there's so many times that I pause and I'm like, okay, I'm teaching him, but he's teaching me because I also have a son, and any kind of scenario or correction or learning point was like, wow, I can apply that to me too in some scenarios. And I totally relate to what you're saying, Jenny. Had the same experiences. And I have to say too, to this topic of the things where we learn, it's humbling too, because some of those things aren't hard. It's like a check on, well, how am I walking in this? Like being able to apply it to yourself too. Yeah, it can be humbling in a good way. I mean, it's a good thing to be humble because you learn in those moments, especially how God works through that.
And I think about, I'm not a mother, but I have seen my friends' children and my nieces and nephews grow up. And so I've experienced some of those milestones through them. And I would agree, it's rewarding. And I keep getting all these graduation cards in the mail from all my little preschoolers at church that are graduating this year. And I'm like, wow, another feeling of old. Oh no, I'm old. Another preschooler is graduating. So I'm having these these pangs of like, oh, I can't be that old. They can't be that old. What happened? You blink and in a moment they're graduating and moving on and possibly getting married in the next couple years. And it's just, it's a really rewarding and time.
I agree. And I just want to add that it seems like as we have these little babies, we think they're never going to grow up. For some reason, as moms, we think like, oh, this stage is going to last forever. We're going to be snuggling them forever. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh yeah, they're going to be in T-ball forever. They're going to be chasing the soccer ball and like utter chaos with all the other kids as they're 4 years old. And it's interesting that as moms, we want to model good behaviors. Obviously, our children are looking and they're watching and they're observing us as their role models. And then obviously we're pouring into them and we're speaking truth over them. But then I think joy comes in those little moments when they say the same thing that you said to them years prior. You know what I mean? They make the same comment, or so you're like, they were watching back then. They did get it back then. And you see those seeds that were planted, like you see them blooming. And as a mom, that's just so rewarding. And it just like, it brings joy to a whole nother level of like, wow, God, I see the movement. I see what I did, and the prayers and the time that I invested back then is now blossoming. And yeah, I guess I see that more now as my son's off to college. When he comes home and he'll say specific things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to tell you the same thing. So it just brings a sweet spot to your heart, and you smile going, okay, he was listening even when he was 4 years old when I was telling him that.
Oh, that is so rich. I love that.
So what I hear, Jenny, is don't give up praying for your children. Continue to teach them the word, bring them to church. Don't give up. Be consistent in that. Is that something you would want to share or just expound on a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. It's like sometimes, our kids go through disobedience at specific times in their life, and who knows, it could be at 2, could be at 5, could be at 18. But I truly believe, they're walking their own walk with the Lord, but we need to come alongside of them and continue to pray, continue to pour love into them, because we are still planting those seeds no matter what their behaviors look like at the time. You know what I mean? God still owns them. God still loves them more than I love them. And so it's a part of like relinquish, surrender, but also model and pour into them. Yeah, don't ever give up, right? Because what the enemy intends for harm, God always intends for good. And so I know I've seen it in my own life and my own son as a mom. It's like you're going, oh my gosh, I want to rip my hair out. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I should do, Lord. And then it's like just pressing into God and just covering my son with the word of God, the blood of Jesus, and just pouring love and love and love into him. It's like, even though he's rebelling, you still get to see the fruit later on. It might not come for years, right? Let's be honest. It might not come, but we still get to see that. And what I love about God is that he gives us those glimmers of hope along the way when we ask. We're like, God, my prayer is always like, God, give me something tangible to make sure like my prayers are really working, that he's really hearing, and the Lord is faithful, and he does, and he shows me those things. And it's like, as a mom, you're like, okay, what I'm doing is working. I'm just not seeing the results in the time that I want to see. So I still need to be patient and persevere. So yes, Bethany, I agree. Moms, don't ever give up. Just continue to pray. The Lord has got a plan. And it may not look like something's happening, but we don't know when those seeds are going to be watered. We don't know when the Lord's going to grab onto our kids' hearts and their minds and captivate them in a way that we can't as moms, right? Only God can captivate our kids in a way and draw them closer to him. So he never gives up on them, just like we don't. So,
Right.
And God never gives up on us, which is great. So it's sort of a similar attribute of God. God doesn't give up. You as mothers don't give up on your kids.
I just want to say there's the word mom is very broad. I mean, there's can be a lot of people who are not traditional. Okay, I birthed a child moms. There's moms that are in our sphere that are like a mom, and they have been there for us. I can think of many people in my own life, and I've had a mom, I mean, obviously, but I mean, she's passed, and I've had other people who have been like a mom to me. And they're just wonderful people who care and are there in moments I need. And I just want to put that out there that everybody who is like Bethany, you are like a mom figure to so many kids and your nieces and nephews as well, and how you care for them. And there's just a lot of people who have that mom title that may not have that actual child that they've, I don't know how to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's many moms out. I know. I don't know why it sounds so funny. Birthed. You don't say that very often.
Totally feel that way. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but I also wanted to piggyback on you, with your kids and their friends, know that you have a huge influence on their life. Sometimes I remember growing up and some of my friends' moms I could open up more to than my own mom. And I would tell them things I wouldn't tell my mom, and or whatever I was going through, because I felt like they understood me better than my own mother. I think it's a teenage angsty thing. And so I just want to impress upon the mothers that are listening, think about your kids as friends, and can they and do they open up to you, and are you able to shine God's light into their life and bring perspective that maybe their parents can't. So God might be using you in your friends' kids' lives is what I'm trying to get at. So
For sure.
it's a different relationship. It's sort of like a relationship I have with kids of all ages that I have either taught at Sunday school. That's probably been my most what I've done the most at. But then my nieces and nephews, they also have a different relationship with me. I'm considered the fun aunt, and I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And so I am bound and determined to be the fun aunt forever.
That's good.
Yes.
I also, there's a demographic that I feel like I want to talk about, because I know that sometimes Mother's Day can be kind of a sad day and kind of a bittersweet. For me, it's very bittersweet because I have wonderful people in my life that are mothers and have mothered me and have been there for me and that I love dearly. But then there's this pang, which is the bitter part, is that I will probably never be a physical mother. And so for me to have to die to that dream that I always had when I was little, I saw my mom. She was a homemaker. She stayed at home. That was my number one job I wanted to do in my life. That was my dream job. I wanted to be a wife and a mother. And God hasn't blessed me with those two things. But I also know that He's blessed me with so many other things. And so I don't want to get down, but I also want to be sensitive. I want to be sensitive to the people that are listening that may not be able to have children, have struggled with infertility, or maybe are choosing to be single or childless like myself. They're single and they're childless by choice. And that's where I am. And that's what I have chosen to do. And it's not an easy road, but I also realize that, and maybe you two can attest to this a little bit because you're both single parents. And so it's not easy being a single parent, is it?
No.
No.
There's definitely challenges.
So
Right.
I have had a lot of friends that have been single parents, and I watched that and I'm like, I don't want to take that on because I know the responsibility. It's huge and it's heavy. And so that's part of my decision of not having children as a single woman, is because I know that it's a lot of work for one person. And I know that my influence is probably greater the way I have chosen, which is working in Sunday school, teaching Wednesday night classes, spending time with my friends' kids. All of those things have brought me so much joy, and I feel like have maybe, I hope and pray, they've furthered the kingdom versus me having my own children. I feel like I've had more time and more energy to pour into those secondary avenues of having children in a different light. And if you let it, I feel like they can bring you joy just in a different way.
Absolutely. There's so many people who have lost kids too, and that's a hard thing on Mother's Day as well. And actually, this is a good time to talk about how Mother's Day got started, because there was a woman in Philadelphia, Anna Jarvis, whose mother had organized women's groups to promote friendship and health. And Anna wanted to honor her by having a memorial service. And that was in 1907. So that was actually the start of the first Mother's Day, if you will. And then it became a national holiday by President Woodrow Wilson in 1914 because it just, people wanted to remember their moms. And I just want to say there's so many scenarios. This brings different things for different people. People who've lost their moms, people who've lost their kids. And I really thought about this. And for me personally, my mom has passed. And what I like to do is pray ahead of time before the day's coming and know that it's coming and just start thinking about all the good things that came out of that relationship that I had with my mom, whether it's a memory of us together, whether it's something good that I pulled out of it, whatever it looks like. And I know we're going to share some things in a little while, but that's what I like to do because there are hard things with, related to Mother's Day. And so I just want to encourage people out there to pray and ask God to give you some peace and lean into Him.
And joy through this, because it can be such a sweet and bitter time of the year and that memory, and everyone's celebrating, and maybe you have had a lot of miscarriages, or you haven't been able to get pregnant, or you're in a season of singleness where God hasn't given you your spouse to have children, or you're a single parent, or you're a mother with like very little people under the age of 5, and you're busy and you're like, I can't, I just need help. We're all in a different season of our life. I think we talk about this a lot, but a verse that has been my life verse for a long time, it comes from Isaiah 58, 9 through 12. And it says, I will always show you where to go. I'll give you a full life in the emptiness of places. Firm muscles, strong bones, you will be like a well-watered garden, a gurgling spring that never runs dry. And God gave me this a long time, and I believe He gave this to me so that I could see my life as not a waste. Because sometimes I think, where's my legacy? As a mom, you're giving a legacy on to your children, and then their children, and your grandkids, and your great grandchildren. And that has always bothered me, that what's my legacy? Who am I passing my wisdom on to? And who will remember me? And I had a moment last Sunday, Carol, and this is probably going to be my joy spot, but I'm going to say it now because it ties in.
Okay.
I'm going to a church I didn't grow up in, but a lot of people from my church growing up go to this church. And so I was standing in church, and I looked across the gym, because we meet in a gym, and I see this shorter lady, and I'm like, she looks super familiar. So then I go up to my pastor's wife, and I'm like, is that Mrs. Wheatley? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh my word. She was my preschool teacher from church.
Oh my gosh.
Way back. And I was probably 3 or 4, and I remember going to her class. I remember her so vividly. And it's some of my earliest memories are her and going to her Sunday school class. And I remember she went on vacation and brought me this little figurine. It was a little owl, and it was probably like 2.5 inches tall, and it was little tiny. And I remember she had it on a tray, and they were all different colors, and we all could pick whatever one we wanted. And I remember I picked a little green one, and I still have it. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in my trinkets, but it's out there. So I was able to actually tell her, thank you for teaching me. And I was able to tell her, guess what? I'm teaching preschoolers. I have taught preschoolers, and I'm still teaching. And thank you for being a good teacher, because the reason I'm teaching Sunday school is because of you. And one of, I can name other Sunday school teachers I had too. But I just think her legacy, I'm not her child, I'm not her daughter, but in a way I'm her spiritual daughter. And I am carrying on her legacy of teaching about Jesus. And that's how I have to look at my life. I'm not a physical mom, but I'm a spiritual mom. And my grandkids hopefully will be out there too. I am actually teaching some of my preschoolers their kids now.
Wow, that is
my grand spiritual grandchildren.
I love it. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, and I want to ask too, this is a really good question, talking about growth and all of that. What seeds, Jenny, have you planted in your son that you now see coming to fruition? I know you talked about him saying some phrases that you've shared, but God works in all of our lives, and as we're moms, he gives us what we need. And I like that question. Just like maybe a story that you have where you see how seeds that you've planted have come to fruition with him.
Yeah. So I grew up in a household where the more the merrier. That was the motto. So it was always like the neighborhood kids were at my parents' house. There was a campfire going. There was always extra food in the fridge, extra beverages in the fridge. Like everyone was always welcome at my house or at my parents' house growing up as a kid. And at my grandparents' house, like they would do the same thing on the lake. Like everyone was always welcome at my grandma's house. My grandma always had way too much food and way too many beds. You know what I mean? There was always room for people. And so I've just grown up with that mentality. But then the interesting thing is that like I love to cook and I love to host. And so when I do that, like I didn't really think about it growing or having my son grow up like in his years, like, oh, like, okay, he may or may not do this. He may not pick it up, But when he went to college as a freshman this year at St. Thomas, he decided Friday nights he was going to cook for his Christian friends. And I was like, really? What? Like you're living in the dorms. And I just was like, honestly, you guys, I was just kind of like, my heart was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's cool. But then I was like, really? How is he going to do this? And then I'm like, the Lord was like, let go, let go. Like this is his opportunity to be himself and do his own thing. And so what it has evolved to just like brings me joy and it melts my heart as a mom because he will present the main course. So for instance, like he will make the chicken parmesan, he will make the shrimp Alfredo, and he'll take my credit card and he'll go to the store and he'll buy the groceries and then he'll prepare the food. Usually him and like one or two other people will do this preparing food deal together. And then they just invite people. And so it's whoever wants to come, whoever doesn't have a place to go, whoever they run into the hallway and say, hey, come on, do you have something to do Friday night? If you don't, come on over. And so it's the more the merrier has passed on that legacy from my grandparents to my parents to me and now to my son. And it brings me so much joy because when he comes home and he talks about these experiences to me and he says, yeah, Mom, these kids are like, wow, this is the highlight of my week. Like, I don't know what to do on Friday nights, or I used to just sit in my dorm room Friday night because I don't want to go out and drink and party. And you invited me and I feel part of something, or wow, we had fun at game night. So they'll be up till like 1, 2 in the morning playing games and just talking. And so it just excites me as a mom to just see like this legacy is like moving on and moving forward.
I love that share. That is so good. Wow. I wanna be invited to some of those meals. That sound really good.
All right. Come on over.
Yeah.
Come on over. Well, I get him for the he'll be home for the summer. So maybe I'll have him do a little cookout for us ladies.
There you go. I'm going to place my order.
Exactly. Oh.
I also think through that, like piggyback on that is, what did Jesus do? What did Jesus show? He always broke bread. He always had a meal with his disciples or with people. I think of Mary and Martha in Bethany with Lazarus and all that. He loved spending time with them, and they had a meal and they prepared. And meals bring people together. There's a community aspect of that. There's a very unity within that whole of sharing of a meal. So it's so cool that he has continued that. That's awesome.
Oh, I love that you brought that up because it just popped into my head, hospitality. And we just got through the study of Acts at our church, and it was a theme throughout that is hospitality and how people would step up and help. And you mentioned the table, like our community, Bethany, and it's all, that focus of being around the table and talking and sharing. And and sharing the word and just being together. And as you said, community, there's unity in that word. And that's such a great, great point. That whole message about hospitality and yeah. Oh, so good. Well, I want to bring up some mom stories because, oh my gosh, my mom, I wanted to start with my mom, and what I think of is Proverbs 31. As I was looking through Proverbs 31, there's a couple verses in here that just made me chuckle as I was doing this kind of research or getting ready for this podcast. And one is Proverbs 31:27. She looks well to the ways of her household. This is all about, a godly woman, this Proverbs 31, starting at 10 through 31. And it talks about a woman who is godly and takes care of, and she's a good wife, and she, what that all looks like. And also it speaks to her taking care of her household. And so I love this one because it says she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. My mother was not idle. She was the mom who was, this house has to be clean. We had our chores to do. I remember a can of Pledge, for all the wood furniture. You got to use the Pledge to polish and all this. And that did make me the same way when I moved on and had my house. But I kind of let that go to the wayside because it took too much time. But and then I want to share one more. Proverbs 31:15. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household. So my mom was a phenomenal cook. She always had a wonderful meal for us, and it was a full meal. It wasn't just, here's a can of Spam, go and make a sandwich or whatever. She would put her heart into making these meals. And it was all the things, the entree and the vegetables. And I remember she would make the best pies. We're talking double crust here, no cheating by going and getting graham cracker crust or whatever it looked like. Cherry, blueberry, strawberry rhubarb. And oh my word, all of this. And you guys, you've heard about, you make meals from your heart. And I just feel like it should be an official love language, because that's how many moms, I feel, give back, is like, I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to make sure this is a good meal. I want to make sure they get something nourishing. And she definitely did that and passed that on to me. So I did make a lot of meals when I had my young son, and now he's grown up and I don't get to make as many, but when I do, I love it and I want to do it the best way I can, So just a couple things about my mom I wanted to share. How about you guys, Jenny?
Yeah, I would say my mom was very similar. We grew up on a farm, and so everything was canned. We had a massive, I think 1.5 acre garden. And so that was part of my sister and brother and I's chores, was to go weed the garden. I think my mom just wanted us to get out of the house so she could do the cooking and do the laundry, and well, probably because we were fighting too, let's be honest. So, but I have to say too, the importance of that home cooked meal. I never really realized it until I had my own child, how important those meal times are as a family. And she poured her heart and soul. I mean, growing up on a farm, we had fresh beef all the time and fresh venison and fresh vegetables from the garden. And so everything was home cooked from scratch, special seasonings and sauces, which she still hasn't given me the recipe to. Someday I'll get them. But yeah, I just love that because I think I took so many things for granted. And then, you go off to college and then you're like, oh, I have to cook for myself. And, oh, I'm going to eat a burger and I'm going to eat this fast food. And there was nothing like going home to have that home cooked meal. And just the comfort that she created and the safety net she created in the home. You could just walk in and it seemed like all of your worries just fell right off of you. When I come home from college, it was oh, and you sleep better when you're around your parents and you're like, mom's taking care of me. She's going to do my laundry, even though she didn't need to at that age. But she was just taking care of the things. And I think that's one of the joys we get as a mom, as caretakers, as big-hearted, like we see how we can pour into our kids and love on them and help them to become the best little humans, as they grow. So yeah, I just so appreciate that about my mom too, the whole cooking and cleaning and keeping the household up. My sister and brother and I, we were busy, but I think she kept us busy as well, so we were out of her hair. But yeah, oh
For
man,
sure.
good memories in that garden. I have to tell you, she was planting and yeah, oh boy, it was pretty structured. You plan it out and then, you're picking things and canning all summer long. It seemed like I had garlic smelling fingers for making so many dill pickles.
I love that. How about you, Bethany?
Well, if we're talking about food, I'll tell you my mother has ruined store-bought bread for me forever because she made homemade bread all the time growing up. And I don't remember us ever buying a loaf of store-bought bread until I was an adult and I went out on my own and I bought a bread and I was like, oh, this is terrible. It's horrible. This is what they call bread? This is not bread. So my memory of I was homeschooled, so we would be in the kitchen doing school and mom would be making bread and I'd see her knead the bread. She kneaded it by hand and then she'd put it in the loaf pans and they would rise and then we'd put them in the oven and then that smell would just waft through the kitchen and the whole house and oh, it's like nothing better. And so then it would come out piping hot and we'd flip it over because we would want the ends. It's the only time I ever liked the ends of the bread. The what do they call those? The
heel.
Well,
heel.
Yeah, thank you. The heel. And you would cut it, it would just be like so warm and the steam would be rising and you put butter and it would melt immediately. And then, oh my word, you'd hope you didn't burn your mouth when you put it in your mouth.
Okay, you're making me hungry now.
I know, I'm making myself hungry.
My mouth
I can
is
even
watering.
smell it. But I have me too. I can smell it and taste it. But my mom she's an adventurer. Things that she told us was we're going on an expedition. And our family motto is never give up. Never, 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 never. And add about 10 more nevers. Never give up. So that's our family motto. And a lot of people know it. So her other favorite word, sorry, I'm trying to remember like some of the things that she's like really known for. Improvise. Let's improvise, which means if you don't have what you need, we'll figure out a different plan. We've got this, you can do this, like improvise. So that's another, like her word, I would say, was improvise. So when I was about probably 7 or 8, we live kitty corner to a pond. And at the time, the pond has had water high and low. This particular summer, it was pretty high. We had a pretty big storm one day, one evening, and it blew a lot of stuff around. And my mom had been wanting a garbage can, like not a garbage can, like a small one. We're talking like one of those industrial large, 5, then it would be 5, 100-gallon.
Like
I don't know, a big
thing.
Garbage can. Yeah. And my dad she was we were a one-income family. My dad worked and my mom stayed home with us. So we didn't have a ton of money. And so she would pray about stuff. She's like, Lord, help me. I'd really like a garbage can. So she was telling us about this, very open about it. Okay. So we walked around the block, we'd bike or whatever. And we biked around the block one day and she was with us and we look in the pond and there's a garbage can. One of these garbage cans that she's really wanted for a long time.
Oh my word.
Like, oh, look at that garbage can, Bethany. And it was kind of far enough out where you couldn't, like you would have had to like go in about maybe a foot or more. And it's like that muddy gush, like not pleasant. Okay. But it wasn't too far out there. And so she's like, how do we get that? So her mind, you almost see the wheels turning. So we went home, went the next day, it was still there. Went the next day, it was still there. Mom's still thinking, still eyeing up this garbage can that nobody's claimed. It's from the big bad weather we had. So one day I wake up and Mom goes, Bethany, I have an idea. And I was like, what? Oh, I was all gung ho. I was not the child that was like, oh, I don't want to look at I don't want to be with my mom. Like, I was like, what are we doing? We're picking cans off the side of the road. Perfect. I'm in. And I would go pick cans. My sister was like hiding in the back of the car going, please don't let me, my friend, see, please. And I'm like, what are we picking up, Mom? Like, what are we grabbing? Like, we got, stuff at the side of the road. My mom is always eyeing up stuff on the side of the road that people are getting rid of. She's like, what is that? She dumpster dives. This is my mom. This is her beginning of her dumpster diving. This is pond diving. So she's like, I'm going to get 2 5-gallon buckets. I'm going to put my foot in each one, and I'm going to walk out there in the water to get the garbage can. Are you in? Are you going to help me? Because I'm going to need you to like throw it to you. I'm like, yes, I'm totally in, Mom. So we go hiking with her. 5-gallon buckets, and I'm just in tow, ready to go, ready to help her. So it's like probably like 4:35, around that time. So we are getting ready. She's on the edge. She's got her feet in. She starts walking out there. She's being gingerly about it. Well, when she's walking out there, I see this truck kind of slow down because it was right next to this neighborhood road. And I'm like, I bet, I was kind of putting 2 to 2 together. And so my mom's out there. She gets there. She gets the garbage can. She like dumps it out and like throws it at me and then starts walking back. And this guy in this truck gets out of his truck and starts walking down towards where we are. And my mom looks at the guy as she's coming out of this pond. And she's like, is this your garbage can? He's like, yeah. She's like,
oh no,
well, I just went and got it for you.
Oh my
and
word.
So he took it, and I'm like, in my older years, I think I would have, like, what if I were my mom? I would have like thrown it back in, handed him the 2 garbage bucket, 5-gallon bucket, and said, have at
it. Right, you go get it.
Oh my gosh.
And she gave it back to him. But I just think like I remember it being a couple days and her just thinking about how is she going to get that garbage. And she went to all that work. And I feel like the guy should just given it to her. Because, I mean, come on. He wasn't going in for it. I think he was hoping for another storm that would blow back.
Oh my gosh. I love that story. That is the best story. And not talk about perseverance. And what did you say? Never, 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 never give up. I love that. Oh my word.
I love my mom.
That is so good. Well, I want to talk about fun ideas that bring moms joy on Mother's Day. So I know we all have some ideas on this. Jenny, why don't you go first?
As my son got older, of course I didn't want him to spend any money on anything. So I always said, just write me a handwritten card. Like just, or write me a note about something. And I have to say, like, I still have them, but he's a really good writer. So I think that will continually to be my like birthday gift and my Mother's Day gift every year. That's what I'm going to ask for. So he also loves to cook, make food. And so in his younger years, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which is great, or macaroni and cheese. And I guess to me, it really comes down to spending the quality time together. I don't care what we do, whether he does something or doesn't do something. It's just I want to spend quality time with him. But I think, Carol, you will probably remember this with your son as well, but the whole like dandelion picking, when they're like little and oh, how precious, right? Like you're just like, they're the coolest dandelions in the world. Any other day they're a weed, but on Mother's Day when you get dandelions, they're like the best thing, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're going in a vase for sure. I think mine was Johnny Jump Ups. Those were right beside the dandelions. No, I totally hear that, and I am with you on that and on spending time together. I would have to say that's the most joyful for me current day. When he was younger, my son, he, I would get things from whether it would be daycare or school and those were precious too, because they were his artwork or his, creation in pottery or whatever it looked like. And those homemade gifts are, like you said, a card. They're the best.
Yeah.
And then as far as like my mom, the spending time with her when she was here, and now I just reminisce about those times that we had together and think about her. And yeah, that's kind of what I do when I think about moms and ideas for Mother's Day. Also, when I was little, I gave breakfast in bed, and oh my gosh, I thought it was the best thing, but I know my parents were like, oh my gosh, they're not awake. They're like, okay, I gotta go. Can I go to the restroom first? I'm like, no. I come in with this big tray of stuff. That's always a good one.
And they're thinking, don't spill the juice on the bedroom carpet.
Exactly. Is it gonna fall?
Yeah.
How about you, Bethany?
Wow.
We used to try to give my mom breakfast in bed, but she would hear us kids. We would try to be so quiet because my mom, she had like the lightest sleep. And I remember there would be a few times where we would hear her coming upstairs, be like, go back to bed, go back to bed, go. And she'd be like, what are you doing? What do you got? I'm like, come on, Mom, it's Mother's Day. Like, figure it out. Like, it's not right. Now I realize as an adult, when you have to go to the bathroom, which we only had one bathroom and it was upstairs, she probably had to go to the bathroom really bad. And so when she heard us, she woke up and then it was like, gotta go. And she would have had to go upstairs through the kitchen and everything. And so, but I remember my older sister would tiptoe around and she's like, just be quiet. Don't say anything. Like, let's get this. Cause she would always wake up. So, and like try to like spoil, quote unquote, spoil the surprise. But hindsight, now that I see this, I'm like, oh, she probably just had to go to the bathroom. Like, we were up and she heard us, and therefore, but we would try to give her breakfast in bed. We would do homemade cards. She still loves cards. She likes like the frilly ones that pop up and like pour out of the cards. So I actually saw something on Instagram that was a really cute card, like a homemade card, but was sort of like a pop-up, and I'm going to try to make that for her. Mom, I hope you're not listening because you might not be surprised.
I love that. Well, I guess it's time, you guys. This has been amazing. I want to thank you, Jenny, for being our guest today. And we always close with a joy story spotlight from the last week. So it's time for that. And Bethany, you shared one earlier. Do you have another one, or do you want to go with that one?
I'm going with that one. That's been my joy spot.
Okay. And Jenny, do you have one today?
I do. This last week, my son came home for the weekend, which was just so nice to be able to be a mom again and cook for him. So that was definitely a joyful moment in my week, So I just got to love on him and just spend that quality time hanging out, sitting on the couch, just talking. So, yeah.
Yes. Mine's similar. I had a trip that I took, and it was an amazing trip, and I was gone for about 2 weeks. And when I got home, it was so joyful to see my son again and my dog, who was wiggling beyond. I don't think I've seen her wiggle that much before. So she was excited too, but just spending that quality time with my son and getting that first hug was pretty joyful. So, well, thank you so much. And now it is time to sign off. Remember to
pour
out
your
joy.
Yes.